Hey, Tim Higgins here with A&I Solutions. So we're going to talk about another great product today. Actually, I've talked about this product before. It's APM, Application Performance Monitoring, but we're going to talk about the new DX. The DX is APM combined with a couple of products, but it's mainly on SaaS now. So what we're going to do, if you go to A&I Solutions, you can do this with me, hopefully. And if you go to Products, Free Starter Edition, here is Broadcom's new starter editions where you can get a free CDD, you can get free blaze meter, and you can get free rally. Now it has limitations, of course, but just to use it, play it, get to understand it, it's really cool. If you go to learn more about DX APM, here we offer a few things, right? So we have free training. We have Ask the Expert, which would be like myself or one of my teammates. And then we have services, which of course what I've been doing for about 10 years with APM. But if you click on free software, here you'd come in and sign up. Okay. Now I've already done that, so you don't have to, but I recommend doing that. You'll get the email, follow the instructions, yada, yada, yada. So let me go to the actual one that's there. Once you get there, you'll get a login screen. Let me log out real quick. This would be your login screen. You'd have a tenant, okay? But all that's in the instructions. So it's no secrets, nothing you can't follow. When you first log in, you got this landing page. In the landing page, you have AEA, you have APM, and then you have AI Ops. All right, so we'll talk about focus on APM, but we'll mention AEA. In fact, we'll go into it a little bit better. But AI Ops, I'll just kind of talk about it. Okay, so this is your landing pad, and the first thing I'm going to do is click on Open. Now, this is Experience View, but I'm going to recommend to ignore this page for a second. What we're going to do, and I apologize about that, I'm actually running the test app in the background. I can show it to you because this is a demo. The demo, there's a web API, which we're going to make sure we push some traffic through, and we have an HTML front end, and this is going to be our test app. Okay. And I'm simulating tests so I can make it sure that we've got traffic. That's all that is. So you hear me click every now and then. That's what I'm doing. So let's get back to this. Now, the one thing, let me pull up a notepad here. The one thing that you want to think about is the beginning of APM for a vision of CA. Okay, because that helps you understand where you are with the new DX. Back in the day, CA purchased a company called Wiley. Okay. Wiley had a product called Interscope. Interscope had the ability to monitor your applications by agents. If you think about the definition of a metric is a single measurement in time. And in our case, being these agents, it normally was 15 milliseconds. Now that's the average, okay, because not all of them were, but that was the majority of them. These agents then would get installed on your application that was running, and it would gather certain metrics, especially application performance. We'll see that in a few minutes, but if you think about that, what does that really mean? So it's a collaboration of these metrics together. So in the past, what I would do is I would take these metrics, take a single metric, and I would tie a few together to make a metric grouping. And then based off that, I can set an alert because I would know what my standard was. Now we're going to look at this, but that's something totally different. But if I think about this concept, this is what brings up the application performance monitoring, right? Which is an APM. Later on, CA came up with a product and said, hey, this is great for doing back-end and application level. As technology grew, as it always does, we had this horrible thing come out called HTML5 that took over the world. I'm joking. It was actually pretty cool. But it allowed you to do things without interacting with the CLR or JVM, which is two of the main compilers that the agents were able to monitor. With saying that, how did you monitor the HTML? Now, I don't know the history of CEM, but CA purchased a product called CEM, Customer Enterprise Manager, I believe is what it stood for. It's been a long time since I've done it. It had a product called a TIM, which is, we called it a device. The TIM would plug into your network and it would look at HTML traffic. So if I think about a metric, if I had a method, okay, a method call get users, that get users had a start and a beginning and an end. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. But it would do something and it would return a result. Well, that return would be my measurement of performance. Okay, how long did it take to happen? Okay, now for HTML, if I did a request versus a response, so if I sent out a request and got a response back, well, that would be a measurement. So you've tied those two together. CEM plus Interscope gave you the beginning to end of my HTML all the way down to my compiler, otherwise known as code. Okay. That together was called, you guessed it, APM, Application Performance Monitoring. Now, as time grew by, this kind of became a little cumbersome because you had to set all that up. Okay, you installed the agents, you got the data, and then you set it up. Let's go look at it. So I have a couple agents. Let's talk about that first. So if I go here, and on this menu, the top part are all views. The bottom part, of course, where it says settings, is where you set things up. If I click on an agent, it shows me my list of agents. That hasn't changed. Now the agents got better. The install of the agents got much better. So if I look here, if I say, I'm sorry, let me do this first, then we'll look there. If I say download and I say Windows, this is a list of the most common agents. Now, it's not all the agents by all means, because I had somebody ask about Hadoop. Yes, there is a Hadoop agents. There are other agents out there, but these are the most common ones. Okay, at least for now. I don't control this list. It may change next week. I don't know, but that's what I've been told. So if I click on .NET application or infrastructure, the new infrastructure agent is if you ever use the APM agent, application performance monitor. No, I'm sorry, EP agent. Holy crap. Brain dead, forgot what it stood for. But anyway, EP agent was a custom agent that you could write, you can modify, and it was mainly used back in the day to get your what we call like infrastructure data, right? Well, I guess that's right there in the name. But when you think about CPU, disk, and memory, so application can give you that stuff from an application's perspective. But how do I know if I'm running out of hardware? Especially when VMs grew and you got Docker, you got a lot of other things going on in this world. So infrastructure agent is what you think about now to get that hardware information. So if I download the agent, it's really going to download, and then here's my instructions. It's really not hard. The cool thing this does, it actually gives you your settings for the agent. Now, I'm saying that kind of slowly because I'm trying to fly through this because I don't want this video to be an all-day thing. But in the old days, a lot of times, and when I say old days, I'm talking about just a couple of years ago, most of our time was spent inside the agent property files and the config files and modifying the agent, trying to get the data we wanted. And that really can become cumbersome and definitely time consuming. So now what we can do is simply download the agent, unzip it, navigate to this, and hit start. The information is already embedded into the agent. If there is one that needs more information, for an example, we'll do just one more. I'll do .NET even though it's Linux. It gives me the instructions here, and it gives me a profile that I can copy right over, and it shows me how to do it. So really not hard. Setting up the agents have got a lot easier. Now, if you remember earlier, I talked about we're doing the bike shop. Okay, so I do have a bike shop prod. This agent's here. It has an API layer, which is here. The funny thing is there's actually a TDOD. The TDOD is tested and management, but because it's using a web server on that app, it sees that it's there. Now, I haven't opened it in a while. I was going to try to open it real quick, just to prove a point. To be honest with you, I don't even know if I know the address anymore. So anyway, never mind, scratch that. You know what? Actually, it should be up here. So if I say work, and if I say, I'm the type of guy that if something comes up, it kills me if I can't prove it. Right here. Advanced. Let's proceed to it. Okay. Now what I'm showing you is that agent was showing that it was disconnected. Shortly when it realizes there's data and there's traffic, it will actually start working. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. Remember, it's admin or administrator. I love this product. I do have videos on it. It's just been a while since I've used it, so it's administrator. There we go. So now in time, this will say connected. Now, what's saying that, that's all you have to do for your agents. I even have an agent on my PC. Oh, I took it off the other day. Sorry, but I even have an agent on my local laptop. Now, I will show you how to do it, but again, we just did it. It was just this infrastructure agent. Now, agents, like we said, gather metrics. So I'm going to go to my metric view. Now, see, my buddy Todd Hall's online. So we open his up. I can actually see his memory on his laptop. So if I click on this metric, I see bytes in use. Not bad. But here's a total byte. So if I click on that, not bad. Now I got to do the math to bring these two together. But with the new APM, I don't have to. So now I got both of them on the same screen. Now remember earlier I said we would take a single metric, we would add it to another metric to get a true measurement. But now we have this new feature called combine. Now I have both of them on the same grid. So I can see when Todd is going to run out of memory. Okay, not too bad, pretty cool actually. There's a lot of stuff you can do right here in this one little window just looking at your metrics. So a lot of times what I would do is when I come to a customer, I know this 3075 is my server, and I kind of already told you the layout of what we're looking at, so I kind of cheated considering I wrote it. But if we go in here, I can come to a customer and say, well, I see this QA API, so I'll start there. I know you got an API. I know you're using .NET 4.0, okay, at least some version of it. I can see how long, well, I can see the port, sorry, I can see how long it's been up. I can even see the PID ID if I need to go access it. Now, I can see just by looking, you have backends, you have front ends, and you have this thing called a web API, so I'll start there. So in the web API, I can see it's a controller. So I know it's a .NET. I know you got controllers. I know it's a web API. So obviously you use the Visual Studio. You don't have to use Visual Studio, but you use the concept of Windows web API that uses controllers. Now that's really cool. Now we talked earlier about the measurement. The average response time is going to be one of the most important metrics you're ever going to come across. And we'll talk about that as we go through. I want to look at this for a second. You have what I've always called the big five. I don't know if anybody else gives it another name, but you have these metrics no matter where you go. So I have concurrent invocations, I have errors per interval, responses per interval, stall count. Now stall count is something that CA has named years ago. That it's a math, and I could be wrong, just because it's been a long time since I said it. But I think it's 3 cycles. So in this case, it'd be 15 milliseconds times 3 would be 45 milliseconds. Then it's a stall count. Now, what that means is it doesn't mean it's an error. It just means something happened that we probably should let you know about, because obviously a stall count is the beginning of a resource leak, right? So if I have a database connection that didn't get closed, or if I have a web server waiting for a return, that kind of information is going to be a stall count. Okay, I apologize, I'm trying to kick off the tester on the other side. Now, this differential analysis is really cool. What that means is APM is learning your system. Okay, so at some point, your data was here. Your data was here. As of right now, in this timeline, let's go up to say timeline, in the last 8 minutes, it's here. That's really important because if you think about, let's say I'm a shop, we sell widgets. Okay, well at Christmas, my sales may be way up here, but in November or October, it may be way down here. Well, that's not important. That's expected. But what if in December it's way down here? Well, that's not expected. There may be something wrong. So back in the older versions of APM, we had this thing called What's Interesting. And it was APM telling you, hey, you might want to look at this. And that's kind of where this came from. Now, I'm going to do something stupid. Because keep that in mind, because we're going to come back to it. I'm going to say I don't care about that for a second. Get rid of that. And what I'm going to do, this is really stupid because this isn't useful, but I want to look at all these combined. So crazy and wacky as that is, you can do that. Pretty cool, huh? So let's uncheck that. So I know you have a controller. On that controller, you have a method called People API, and that's what we're looking at. Okay. Now, if I go over here and hit traces, let me get some real estate. I now can see the traces on these. Now I like to sort by duration, just because if there's one really bad, I want to see it. 67 milliseconds. You didn't even blink fast enough for that one. But we're going to click on it anyway. Now this gives me, in the programming world, we call this a stack trace. Here, this is actually called a trace because there's a lot of good information. I can see my people API was called through the controller. There's a post method, like we said, that calls a backend on this IP. Well, this backend has, it looks like a database that runs a SQL query. Now I can see that right there. Now, disclaimer, we do not keep values. Obviously that could be a security risk, and especially if it's PII data. But here's one view that I can go through and see what each step. Now notice it changes over here depending on what I'm clicking on. That's some really good information. I can also view it from here in a path step, so I can see which one happened to that. Same thing as this, just a little bit more information. I get the duration, the percentage, so forth, so forth. Now, with saying that, this is really cool. I did see there's a database, so let's go look at that. So if I go to backends, here's the port. Here's this Target bike shop. We're playing dumb, okay? If I click on, let's go to here. I can see my big five. Now I always say big five because there's always these, but there's always some extra depending on what you're looking at. Not always, most time. And here, I have a connection count. Pretty cool. Okay? But I also have commits and SQL. Well, let's open up SQL, and I have these queries. In these queries, I can actually see the store procedure that are actually being captured. I open one of each of these, and I can see their big five of each one. Now, one thing that you could do, that'd be kind of cool, is what if I wanted to compare the response time for each one of these? Which one is my worst one, okay? Or best one for that matter. Now, combine, and there we go. I can see each one of my stored procedures. It's not the best in the real estate for the names, but I'm sure you can play with that. Let's collapse that because I have this cool little pretty mouse thing that's changing colors on me. But here I can see the values there, and what it's doing is picking up this whole line, so which is good because I have a comparison, right? Now, with saying that, that is what you can do with your metrics. Oh, let's go ahead and look at a few more things, and then we'll get away from the metrics because there's something I want to bring to your attention. Based off of that, I can see you have a web API. Your API calls a backend. Obviously, there's going to be a front end, and there is. It's a QA. Here's my URLs. It's a post, so obviously it's going to start with API. And if I go into here, I can actually see the data for the callbacks on this. I click on this people API, and I can see its data. So that's really not too bad. And that's just me not knowing your application, but understanding the metrics. But it's still kind of cumbersome for somebody who's not really used to using Interscope, because that's what we used to do with Interscope. We would take these metrics, we would combine them, we would stick them on a dashboard, and then we would set alerts based off what we thought was useful for that time, which is in essence called a KPI. Now, I do know the Bike Shop Pro, there's not much here because it's just HTML. I still get the CPU and all that cool stuff. So we'll talk about this when we get to it, but just keep in mind that it's there. This is the web API. That is just a Windows application running in the background. Okay, so when doing the metrics, setting with a customer, it really could take 6 months with big customers just to get a decent dashboard. A dashboard is just your view, right? But you want your dashboard useful, so what you do is you'd set your metrics. You would combine those metrics to metric groupings. You would set KPIs on those, otherwise known as alerts, and then put those on a dashboard. But now we have all this cool stuff. What if I want to see all that in alignment? Okay, so now we have this map that gathers the same information, but in a view that's connected and laid out for us. Okay, so what I'm getting into is I can see there's 2 nodes. I'm digging deeper into this map, and notice it's catching. So if I looked at this in a whole, I can see my URLs, my people, calling my controller, call it my backend. Okay, now it looks like there's two backends because it actually calls an API to call this backend, but it's still the same one. All right, now remember when I said earlier I have this T-dot thing running? It even picked it up. This is a different view that allows me to see this exact same data. Now the cool thing is if I pick on this controller and if I open metric browsing, it actually opens up the same view for me, but it highlights to whatever I clicked on up here. So I don't have to go find it in my metrics anymore. It does it for me. If I click on business transactions, I can see the traces that we were looking at. Pretty cool, huh? Oh, and just FYI, if there's an error and it shows up, we'll talk about that later, you would see it here as well. It'd be like red or something like that. Now, with seeing that, I have my metric views here. I have my maps. They're laid out perfect. But notice I can select these. If I look over here at component view, this is information based upon this node. We'll call this a node. In this node, I can see all the information I need. There are some alerts here that I can look at. Here's my big five as well, including showing me the history as well. Now, I use that history loosely because that's just, like I said, that's APM learning your system. But down here I have what's called attributes. Attributes, think of those as properties that describe whatever I've highlighted over here. You have out-of-the-box properties. These are very important. And then I can create some of my own. Now, I'm not going to get into that because I do have videos out there that show you how to do that. And that's a pretty long process. Well, it's not long. You just want to make sure you do it right. But if I collect a few of these and I just say this and this one, now I could tie these two together and make this call my code, my database, right? And I could set that by an attribute. Now, this is not a decent, ugly view. Some of these, I don't know if this demo app is worse. No, it's not even running. So let's go back to here. But you would take those attributes and you would actually create what we call a perspective. That's this view. Now, I've been to some customers where this view is just so full of data. And in your case, it probably will be. And it's just unuseful. That's where you would come in, create your attributes, and create what we call a perspective. Now, this perspective is one that I created. And again, as you can see, it's pretty much the same view. That's a bad example because I don't have anything else running on this machine. Okay, but what I could do is go up here, now that I got the perspective, and add what's called a filter. In the filter, it is these attributes as well. So I can say I want application, and I don't want t.web set. Now, that one's gone. Now I'm just looking at my application. The beautiful thing about this map, and I've came across this before, is you don't program this map. This map is based upon traces. And I've actually had some customers complain, and not complain, but say, hey, they're not using this database. Yeah, they are. You didn't write this. I didn't write this. The trace picked it up. So at some point, it was touching that database. Now, with saying that, this is pretty cool, especially for an architect's view. There's a lot of stuff I can do here. The takeaway here is to understand you can get your metrics. You can clean this up and make it useful. You're going to see this again. Oh, and by the way, if I click on the agent, I can also see the CPU, disk, memory, and all that cool stuff. See, this even has alert for CPU utilization. So that's really cool. Now, with saying that, I'm going to take you away from the map view. I'm going to try to move a little faster. This is great for somebody who is actually in the system. They want to do APM. They're building out their agents. They're checking everything out. That is super cool. But what about the average person? They're not going to spend all day staring at APM. You could, if your boss wants to pay you for that. But now we'll talk about knock later. Situations like that's totally different. But here's another view called experience view. So we started with looking at the agents. I was able to group those agents together in something called a map. But what if I want to know just basic information? I'm going to go back a little bit in time just because I want some good data. Okay. Now we'll talk about the timeline in a few minutes. But notice here, now I'm looking at slow time error. I'm not sure what this means. Glad you asked. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. So just say it. Ignore this and let's go back. Pretend like I didn't click on that. Now with that, I actually want to go back a little bit more. Apply. What this says is within this timeline, this is how many transactions I had. If I had any problems, they would show up here in anonymies. Think of that as that what's interesting. Remember I told you about that earlier? We're going to look at those as well. Now I'm surprised that, unfortunately, I didn't run this demo long enough to pick up the errors and stuff, so hopefully we'll pick those up. There's a couple things to take interest in. This is your response time. Within this time, out of responses, I had 4.1 million that succeeded in less than a second. Less than 2 seconds was 1.4, and 3.8 was 2 seconds and greater. Out of those transactions, you can look at more details in a few minutes, 109 was considered slow. Now there's that cool word. I'm not going to move my mouse, but if you actually read this, it was based off of metric alerting or that differential analysis. Remember, we talked about that. And I had 52 errors. Now out of this, I had 161 poor transactions out of 9.3 million. So if you did the 9.3, that's where this adds up. I want more information. So I'm going to click on this. Okay, it kind of looks the same, but now I see my QA and my TDOT. Don't really care about the TDOT, but what I do want to see is this broken down. Now all this is your experience view broken down to the steps. Now again, I did videos on this, so I don't want to get too detailed. So if you want to know more about that, go watch those videos. But you can see the differential analysis here. Unfortunately, I'm still not picking up problems. Let's see if I can go back even further. I'm not sure if I can. I did give a demo a while back. Why can't I go deeper? That's interesting. All right. Oh well, we'll do that later. Okay, so here we go. Perfect. Well, unfortunately, it's an error in TDOT. So let's go back to our applications. And let's see if we can get some traffic here. The problem here is traffic. It's not anything else. So we'll go last 30 minutes, click on applications, and I should get a problem. What I'm probably going to do is break this video, go create a problem, and then come back. Okay, so now I'm back, and I went and created an error. Let's see if it exists. So I'm going to go back to the 5th, to today, apply. Now we have some poor transactions. We have one. What's interesting, again, is what I'll call it. Now, there's ways to get to that. That's one thing I was going to show you earlier. You've seen the screen earlier, and I can see here that it points it out. Now, this little section, and again, I did videos on this, but I'm going to try to detail it a little bit better just to end this presentation, is when you see this, this tries to answer the what, when, where, and how, and to who. I think I got this right. Here again, I've got TDOT, and then I've got, notice here, I've got 30 errors. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper, but I can see from here, I'm kind of cheating because I can go to anywhere I want from this view, but we're going to go one more. And I can keep going if I want. I can say there's a problem with my people URL. And then, you know what, from here, I'm just going to click on this. Now, I have a little bit more information because now I have the when did it happen, okay? So I have maybe this person has a problem. This is when it happened. Now we're going to throw on our debugging hat and open up the notebook analysis. Now this screen has changed a little bit if you've seen the other versions, because now it automatically points it out in big bright red of where you should go. The biggest thing is I can see right now that if I read this error message, it says a physical connection is not usable. I can scroll down, I can get to my metrics if I need to. I can do my comparison so I can see what happened yesterday versus today or whenever. Here's my attributes we talked about and the business transactions that were affected. Okay, so you get a lot of information on this one screen based off of just that debugging. Now, the one thing I like to do, now this is the map we talked about earlier. Here's the error, here's response time. One thing I like to do is, let me see, you can also add or remove panels and all that cool stuff. The good thing about the timeline, let's go back to here. And what I like to say is time versus effort. How long would it really take me to get to that problem? Well, I can see right here, this is my app. I have 2 experiences. I'm going to click on it, and it took me right to it. I can see my problem is a database. I open it up, and there's my problem. That took like just a couple of clicks, or if I knew your application or not. The other thing that I like, let's scroll up. The edit the panels, you can change what views you're looking at, but in this case we've got everything, so I'm going to close it. I'm good with that. If I click, let's see, time evidence is what I was looking for. This actually would show me in timelines when things happen. So if something's beginning to crash, I can see that automatically. The other thing I want to point out real quick, let me see, let me get to, sorry. was trying to get to the actual map, but let's go ahead and click on this. That takes me to the map, the little quirly thing. And from here, I was trying, bear with me. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to show, I kept clicking on timeline, that doesn't work. Yeah, click the little on and off button. This little feature is really cool, and again, I'll talk about this in the other videos as well. This is your status, your red light, green light. We didn't talk about that, but basically you're alerting. This is if something happened in the topology. So in other words, if I added a new agent, or if a agent went down, or something like that. And then an attribute is if a new attribute had changed or was created. That's very useful if I'm dealing with like config files, and let's say something went, I had a red light here, and I have seen a scenario. If this went red, but a config file changed at the same time, well, that might tell you that the config file change is why you got the alert. Anyway, so with saying that, I wanted to show you one more thing. So what we talked about was taking your agents to create the metrics, which is your metric view. From there, you can use those to view your map, to put them in a layout that makes sense. Or what most people do these days is use your experience card as a quick view of what's going on. Now, yours will look better. You'll have better information. You can build as many of these cards as you want. Again, I showed that in the other video. This is just kind of an introduction of what's going on with the SaaS. And then if I also go over here, I still have my dashboards. Now, your dashboards could be something that not could see. I can say show only hide healthy components, which means I'll only see the oops and gotchas. If I click on one of these, of course, what you expect. Okay, so I want to show two more things, and then we'll end this. The other thing, if I go back to here, one of the coolest things is this new AEA. I'm going to talk about this just for a few seconds. Now, if I go in here, I want let's do the last 30 days. I can see my HTTP requests, my total page hits, my users for the month of February. I can even see on a heat map that most of this is coming from Pennsylvania. It used to come from here, now it's in Pennsylvania. Oops, I didn't click on that, but I can go and get more details. Now, I haven't ran this enough to get a lot of details, but if you go through here, you can just see, I can see my crashes, right? Some of the cool things that I really like, if I go to sessions, I can see the sessions that were happening. Now, I'm kind of scrolling through this because this video is not about this. Maybe I'll do one later. But I can get very detailed information on this. Now, I don't have this tied to the agent. So this is just on the front end. This is just on the HTTP. The ideal world is you'd have this tied to your agent. So you'd be able to get the back end information and the front end information. Unfortunately, I don't have that. But I thought that was really cool. This is more about gathering your HTML, more about gathering your traffic, that type of information. To set this up is really not hard. If you come in and if I say manage apps, hold on, I was trying to see why I'm having a problem here. That's okay, we'll deal with that later. But if you wanted to come in, you give it a name, hit next, and all that cool stuff. So we'll deal with that later. Maybe I'll do another video of how to set this up. It's really not hard to set it up. What does make it more, well, I guess I could show you real quick. It's only fair. So since I clicked on that one, I don't know why that other one's having an error. If I was setting up an Android, I'd follow this information. They even have a video here of how to do it. If you're doing iOS, here's your video. You just follow this. What I did was the web app, which was here. Set that one up straight. Again, I'm not sure why this one's having an error. I don't really want to delete it just because I don't know what the problem is, and we're not going to debug it. Now, I guess, oh well, it is what it is. So with saying that, this ties into your front end, as you can see, and it gives you more front end type information from the HTML app that we were talking about. So let's go back to the landing page again. So as a quick snapshot, APM, we talked about that. AEA, that's more for your front end, right? So if ever you see them in the past or something like that, this replaces that. The new AI Ops is a place to allow you to gather all your alerts into one location, and it intelligently figures out information based off those alerts, okay? I'll do another video on that one because, again, it's a video by itself. And I don't have anything to set it up. So I do have services. It has this one. I didn't have anything, but I lied. I do have this, but it's not enough of information to show you good stuff, okay? because what I would hope to do is come down and see prediction insights or capacity analysis, that type stuff, but that data is just not there. I come in here and see my alarms and see which alarms are setting off. I don't have any of that. So anyway, with saying that, the last thing I want to show you, and then we'll call it quits, is if I go back to my Launchpad, and I think it's in settings, and it should be in downloads. I actually, well, not this one, I'm sorry. Went a little bit too deep, maybe it's inside APM. And then here, go to downloads. Yeah, it is. And then here's workstation. If I download the workstation, this is pretty cool. Bear with me here. Oh, there's already one there, so okay, cool. So I don't have to download another one. Let's go look at my downloads. And if I look for workstation, well, that one just finished, so we'll just go ahead and use it. All right, so extract here. And if I go into here, and if I just run this bad boy and give it a few seconds, this is, I know the screen is hard to see, and I apologize about that, but this is Interscope. This was the very first of our conversation we talked about at the beginning. So if I go to Investigator, remember I said Wiley had a product called Investigator. Here's exactly what you've seen on the SaaS. Here's the data here. Notice that's grayed out because I stopped running the script. But here's all the same information. We talked about the metrics. So if you want to think about it in realistic terms, when it comes to using the SaaS, you don't have to deal with the hardware. You get all the extra features. And more importantly, it's, again, I always use the concept of time versus effort. I can get to my errors faster. I can get to all my issues a lot quicker. And just to prove that, I lied. I'll show you one more thing. Is if I go in here and look, I still have my measurement modules. This is for people who know what this is, right? So I can create a new metric module, which is based off gathering metrics, new metric groupings, and again, these are the same as you've seen before. It's just a web's view of it, and then I can create alerts based off of those. So here are your alerts, and the one thing that I wanted to show real quick, there's how you set your thresholds. If I go back to metric view, and we'll pick on my buddy Todd, and I'll just say give me two, we'll take these two again. If I right click, I now can create an alert based off of these selected right here. Okay, so anyway, so I hope this was somewhat useful. It was just more of an introduction. I recommend going and try it. Watch this video a few times if you need to, and again, reach out to us at thiggins@anisolutions.com. Reach out to ANI Solutions if you need more assistance, and we'll be glad to help. Thank you.